Thad Beckham here. You know, the first time I ever seen any transverse arrow points in illustrations or descriptions, I thought, now that's very weird. I mean, they look strange. I said, why would anybody make an arrow point that way? Well, I was missing one key element, and that's the pristine sharp edge. The chisel tip edge, which that edge you cannot get any sharper than it already is. If you put a tool on there to try to flake that edge, it's going to get duller. That is as sharp as a piece of flint's going to get. So that made sense, but it did pique my curiosity to kind of dive in and see what I could find. And these were used in, I think, middle Mesolithic to early Neolithic, 8,000 to 5,000 years or something ago. I mean, very old, ancient points. My original thoughts were how many of these were made and actually used. Well, there's a YouTube channel called Flinting Scandinavia. You can go watch this guy. Every trip he finds these transverse arrow points, seems like. Well, what I didn't understand was these points utilized this super extreme sharp edge. Okay, were these really used for arrows? Apparently so. There's been some found on arrow shafts, apparently. So, I mean, that kind of clears that up. They've been found in association with kill sites. The research that I found looks like they were hunting big game with these. Would they work? I don't know. If you watch me in the future, I'm going to do some penetration tests on these, on whitetail deer, not live deer. I don't want to take the chance of doing that on live deer and not being successful or wounding an animal unnecessarily, but I think they would work. I really do. But what I need is, you know, next hunting season I'll get a deer. It's been rifle shot or one that I took with the bow, and we'll put these to the test and see if they can penetrate deep enough. I know they cause a serious bad wound. It comes down just like a chisel, and that ridge gives it strength. And you know, the longer blades you make, you can snap them off, and you'll see how I do that on an anvil. And get more out of the same blade. Get several out of the same blade. Like this one here, I could get 2 points out of this blade. But you see the ridge, and I think that's very important for the success of this thing, for the durability of this thing. Piece of Flint River, a little thicker, you know, use a thicker flake if you want a heavier, more durable transverse. But what I'll do is come in here, you see this super sharp edge, it hasn't been touched, and I'll just take an anvil and trim this down into the triangle. Okay, if you get some blades off a core or even a biface, you can look in your debitage and probably find some flakes that you took off, not necessarily trying to produce blade cores for transverse arrow points, but still you can find some that will work. What a beauty. That's a nice one. All right, here we go. There's a beauty. Not only would that make prismatic, but that will make an excellent transverse. Doesn't have to be that big. These have been found actually with the haft material still on them, the pitch. That just went out, it's soft enough anyway. I seat it really good. Okay, like I said, your eyes are really good at lining things up. And while the pitch is still workable, you can make little adjustments. Make sure it's all the way seated in the bottom of the haft. And make sure you're lined up both ways. You know, you're just estimating with your eyes, which is okay. I mean, use your abilities that were given to you. You don't always have to measure everything and have it calculated. What kind of stood out to me, you know, a lot of people know that bird points are used in the Americas for big game, no question about it. And most of these transverse arrow points are very small. I mean, smaller than this one that's on this arrow. This is fairly large. But I've used these now in hunting squirrels, and they're very effective. I mean, wicked, really. A light animal like a squirrel, you can't get penetration results like you want. They're too light. The arrow kind of moves the game. It falls with the momentum of the arrow. You know that if you ever shoot something light, like a water bottle, you know, your arrow will go through it only so deep. But, you know, it may kick the water bottle 5 feet across the ground because it doesn't have enough resistance to allow the arrow to penetrate deeply. And you shoot into a target with the same arrow and it goes really deep because the target's got weight. Same thing with big game, you know. So I really don't know until I try these, you know, on an actual deer carcass to see how deep they'll penetrate. What do I think? I don't know. I really don't. I know they're devastating on small game. Big wounds, terrible wounds. And but I can't really judge the penetration. I don't really like shooting ballistic gel because it's kind of unrealistic. But if you shot it in comparison with a regular arrow point, and you could compare the two wound channels and how deep they go compared to one or the other. And then the other thing, if your tests are going to be accurate, you're going to have to use a wood bow, you know, something like this bow. This is a solid wood hickory bow, a little short hickory bow. A primitive string, you know, if you want it to be accurate, you're going to have to shoot what somebody may have been, something similar to what somebody may have been shooting back then. You know, so the tests that I've seen done on YouTube have just been so-so. I mean, truthfully, 8 to 10 inches is lethal on any whitetail. Just what happens with the hide and that type of thing. Just a penetration on a real animal. And using archery gear that may have been used in that time period, as close as you can come up with that may be close to being accurate. We're never going to know exactly what they were using, you know, 8,000 years ago. If I shoot these this fall and I can get them 10 inches into game, like a whitetail deer, then I'll be totally convinced that these were used for big game. One guy said these are scrapers, scraping hide. Well, they're way too sharp to be a scraper. A scraper, I mean, this would cut your hide. You see this Transverse is so much more delicate, and the edge is so sharp it would cut through the hide. And the funny thing about these, you find them on the same sites. you find scrapers and transverse, two distinct different tool types, but these are found real common with the transverse arrow point. But I made this one the other day just to show I don't believe transverse arrow points were ever used as scrapers. I'm going to get the question before we even get there. How accurate are these? How well will they fly? Well, I hadn't shot long range with these, but within, 15 or 20 steps, I mean, they're completely accurate. I haven't seen any planing issues or any problems like that within the short range. But like I've said 100 times in the past, you can agree or disagree. I think most primitive archers, their biggest challenge was getting close. Not how far they can take game, like people think nowadays, how far can I take that animal? Get close and take the animal. If you know, you know.